Hello, GHL Mastery. We are live again for our Friday GHL workshops. We're going to be doing this following up on last week's workshop, which was all about custom fields and custom values. We did touch a little bit on forms and surveys on the last call, but today we're going to dive deep into forms and surveys because there's a lot of different things that you may or may not know that you can actually do with forms and surveys. And they're still part of the foundations of building your assets, which is why this is still basics with GoHighLevel. So when we talk about assets, we're talking custom values, custom fields, forms, surveys, funnels. And when I say assets, I'm talking about all the different things that you need in place inside your agency in order to collect lead data, in order to book calls. So calendars are going to be linked into there as well. Surveys and forms to collect additional information and data about your clients, and kind of how you can structure those, how you can use them, and how to get creative with a couple of gotchas. So with that being said, we're going to dive into forms and surveys a little bit deeper today. And all of our platinum folks, thank you guys for showing up and joining the call. We'll do a little private powwow after this is all done, and then you guys will get the recordings of that at the end as well. So let's dive right in to forms and surveys. And anybody that wants this document at the end of this, let us know. You platinum folks will get this in the private area when we're all said and done. When the recording gets pushed into there, you'll get this as well. So I just want to start to break down kind of the differences between forms and surveys. For those of you that are maybe newer to HighLevel, there's some pretty big differences between forms and surveys. Brendan, I'm going to get you to chime in a few times here and there about the survey structures, because Brendan is our resident survey expert who can make these things do wild and crazy things. And so he'll probably have some really, really cool insights into surveys for you guys. But for now, let's talk about forms and surveys. It's just an easy way to get people to register for things, opt-ins, give you additional information from leads. A lot of the times what we'll use forms and surveys for, if you're using things like Facebook ads, with Facebook ads, especially if you're in any of the special ads categories, you're going to run into situations where, and I'll use real estate as an example, because that's where I've spent most of my time. You can't ask for an address in a Facebook lead form. And so if you do, your ads are going to get shut down. So what you need to do is you need to go name, email, phone number, get that contact record information, and then send them to another page. And that other page is going to ask them additional information about their home, like address, condition, timeline to sell, why do you need to sell, all of that sort of stuff. And that's really where forms and surveys specifically for that example would come into play to capture additional information. Whereas if you're running Google campaigns or Google ads for your clients, you're probably going to want to keep things relatively simple to capture their information. The lower the resistance, the easier it is to get the lead. The higher the resistance, the harder to get the lead, but the better quality lead you're going to get. And again, that's kind of one of the defining factors between forms and surveys. Forms are typically easier to fill out. Therefore, you're going to get more opportunities, more leads, maybe slightly lower quality because of the information that you're asking. Whereas surveys, you're creating a lot more friction by adding a survey, by asking more questions one at a time. Chances are people who get through your survey are far more likely to be interested in what you're offering because they took the time to actually fill out the survey and then give you their contact information. So there's kind of some defining factors of forms and surveys, but let's kind of dive into the differences between both. Forms are one continuous page. So that's, the easiest visual defining factor of a form versus a survey. And I'll show you what this is right here. So if we go into your sites, go to forms, and then you click on, I just created this one as a sample form. A form is one page. So depending on how long your form is, you're going to have to scroll a little bit to fill it all out, but that's what it is. There's no additional questions. It's just a single slide where you can toss all of your custom fields onto the form. You can set up your form either inline or standard. And basically what that means is this form right here currently is as a standard form. It's just everything one on top of the other. And your options are, you can click on styles and right here and turn this onto inline. And that's just going to make a side-by-side comparison of your forms. Now, this part I find incredibly difficult at times to modify and navigate because different custom fields have different layouts on the inline style forms. And so it makes it a little bit more difficult. But one thing that you can do to try to clean this up a little bit is actually adjust your form style and changing the width of your form to be a little bit bigger. And that's going to actually make it look a little bit cleaner. And a lot of people don't know that, which is kind of bizarre to me. But if you make an inline form, depending on the field types that you have, you might want to just increase the size of that form so that it doesn't look so compressed and silly looking. And you can kind of play around with that until it makes sense for your style of questions. Now, in this form, I added a bunch of random standard fields and used questions that you guys might want to ask your own clients. I'm going to go back to standard here just for a second. When you start a new form is completely blank, right? There's nothing on it. And so you need to start to build this form, and you're going to build this form using a mixture of standard fields and a mixture of custom fields. And what do I mean by that? When you go into your form elements over here, you've got all your quick add fields, which are standard fields for HighLevel. So it's going to be name, email, phone number, address. You got button fields, you got city, state, postal codes, website links, all of that sort of stuff. These are all standard fields from HighLevel. And when we start to talk about sticky contact in a little bit, you're going to understand why sticky contact only actually works for standard fields within HighLevel. So if you ever consider turning on sticky contact, you can only use standard fields for your sticky contact. But we're also going to show you a little bit of a trick at the end of the very end of this, how you can actually use what's called ref URLs to pre-populate existing information into a form or a survey so that you don't have to jump around through things. But you've got your standard fields and then you've got your custom fields. Now in this case, I drag and dropped all of these on here already. I've got one field that I didn't, and that is a custom field right here. Last week, we showed you guys how to create custom fields both in the back end as well as in the forms and survey structure themselves. So I created this one today called desired start date. So let's go and just drag that onto the form. And there you go. Now you've got desired start date on the form. So it's that easy to build a form. It's just one thing after the other. And then, of course, because we have phone number, we have the default terms and conditions selection for A2P on there as well. So forms are really, really easy to build. It's what information do you actually want on the client? And there's a whole whack ton of different styling options now with the new form builder. And we'll go through a couple of them, but we won't go too deep into most of them. You'll notice that this probably looks a little different than what you're used to seeing as a standard, where instead of it being a big box around the fields, it's actually just a line. So how did I do that? We're going to go into form style, and we're going to start to tweak some of these things. So you can change your border like so. I hate borders, so I typically leave them off. I'll literally go to none. And then you can change your form corner radius. I almost always do 10. And what that's doing is it's adjusting the radius up here. And everything that I'm showing you in forms right now, by the way, is going to be relevant in surveys. This is all kind of the same baseline structure with this as well. You already saw me mess around with the width, which typically when I'm doing this with a form that is just a single line form, I'm not going to really bother with the width too much unless it makes sense to do so on the funnel. Then you've got all of your padding and things like that, which will just make things go up and down. And then you've got your left and right paddings. I usually just leave those standard. That's totally fine. And then you've got different shadows. So did you want to change the shadow color? And then do you want the shadow color to show on the sides, on the tops, or the bottom? So you can really start to mess around with this. I am not a designer. I want to let everybody know that up front. I am not one of these people who likes to mess around with this stuff, because chances are if I do it, I'm going to make it look worse than it did before. So I leave that to the professionals. But I did want to show you guys that you can mess around with this stuff and make some of these things yourself if you wanted to, without having to go through too much CSS, which is Brendan's department with our company. Now we're going to talk about field style. So I mentioned that this line at the bottom versus a box. Well, how did I do that? I was messing with the field styles here. So we can, again, change the borders of these different fields. I'm just going to leave it at 1 pixel because it looks good. Border type, you've got dotted, you've got dashed, you've got solid. I like solid myself. Do you want a quarter radius on it or no? And I can't remember where the heck I changed this from button or box to solid line. Brendan, do you know where that is? I literally just did it, and now I'm like, where the
No,
heck?
because I've right there.
Oh, there it goes.
Input
Input style, line or box. So you've got box right there, and you've got line right there.
So basically, that's just changing your borders from being all the way around to being a bottom border only.
Yeah, you got it. So that's basically it on forms. There's really not much else you need to know. However, we're going to get into we're going to dig a little bit deeper on survey structures, because survey structures are, while the options are similar to your form structures, there's a lot more that you can do with surveys. And this is where it starts to get really, really fun. But the building component is very, very similar. So you've got your on submit options here. Now you do have this for both forms and surveys. Do you want to send a message, or do you want to open a URL when they submit the form? This can be overridden by your funnel settings. When you put a form in a funnel, you can override these settings here on the form based on what you want to have happen in your funnel. So most of the time,
those are more used for embedding the form into a non-GHL website.
Yeah, correct. So when you're building your funnels and websites inside HighLevel, it's a lot easier to tell this form where you want it to go in the funnel itself rather than this, because you may actually have this form on multiple different funnels. And so an example of that would be, you've got it on a opt-in funnel versus a registration funnel for a webinar. You could use the same form for two different things if you wanted. I don't recommend it. But if you had an open URL structure, the thank you page is going to go to the same thank you page for every single form on every single funnel that you have, and you may not want that. So I usually just leave it for message, and then I control my on submit destinations from the funnels itself. So Platinum folks, do you guys have any questions on forms? Going once, going twice? No. Okay, great. I'm going to come back here and just really quickly show you. Obviously, this just has a really quick diagram of the things that I just did. So now let's go into surveys. Surveys are a different beast. I love surveys. There's a lot that you can do with surveys. They're a great way to gather additional information, as I mentioned before. But surveys allow you to create multiple slides and pages to ask different questions to get more information on your customers. And the thing that we love about it, specifically surrounding estimator tools, is the ability to do conditional logic. So based off of something that they selected, whether that's a radio button or a single option, we can do different things with it. And so when you start to get really creative about how you're building and developing your surveys, you can actually do a lot of really cool things. Now, there's a couple of gotchas in here. And this section right here is about disabling auto navigation, which is something that some people might forget to do. So let's go into surveys right now, and I'm going to use the same survey structure or the same custom field structures in the survey itself. So instead of putting everything on a single page form, we're now going to break these things up into different slides. And what you can do with this is now ask different questions and start to add conditional logic to your surveys, which, like I said, that's a lot of fun.
Now there's kind of two options. You can automatically just do question by question, where you're only asking one question at a time, which the settings has, or you can start grouping specific questions together.
Yeah. And to that point, when you start to use conditional logic, this is something that Brendan and I do all the time with our surveys, is that because we know radio buttons and single option fields are your logic fields, we almost always end a slide with a radio button or a single option button, because now we can control where they're going to go based on the answer that they just gave. And so I've set this very first slide up to do just that, right? So do they have previous ad experience? That's just the name of the field. By the way, you can change this. So by coming into here, this is the actual custom field name. So previous ad experience is what I gave the custom field name. If you want to label this as a question, you can do that by changing your label. So do you have experience running ads in the past? Right? Something like that you can put in there. So
now another option that I'm going to touch on. This is good if you don't mind what that looks like. And then if you wanted to change what that label looks like, you'd have to use CSS. Well, not a lot of us are really good at CSS. So instead, what we do with ours, we actually blank that and we put a text field above it and then write out our question, because the text field has built-in CSS options that you can just click and change and adjust its look however you want it to.
So that's the example that Brendan was just talking about right there, right? Where we have no label anymore, but we've made our label to our question a text field, which then gives us the ability to mess with the size, mess with the color, do whatever we want to do with it while leaving the custom value the same. So we do this, actually, I would say we do this in almost every single one of the surveys that we build.
Every question we have, we do it this way.
Yeah. So have you run ads in the past? This is a conditional question in this survey structure, because if you have run ads in the past, the next slide down here, we want to know what types of ads have you attempted to run in the past. So now by selecting our yes, no option, we have this logic field right here. So if yes, we do nothing. So there's a bunch of different slides that we could choose from. But in this case, if the answer is yes, we want them to go to the next slide. So we're just going to leave that blank. Whereas if the answer is no, we want them to skip this slide because they haven't run ads in the past. So we don't need to know where they've run ads in the past. So you can start to really develop a lot of really funky conditional logic using radio buttons. And we've got an example here of just 2 options, but in a lot of our surveys that we build, we have multiple options that they can choose that will go to multiple different sections of our survey. And with that being said, one of the things that Brendan and I find kind of fun, because we're nerds when it comes to this stuff, is if you've got, let's just say you've got an 18 slide survey, but based off of certain criteria, some people may only answer 6 of those slides. Now you've really got to start to think ahead of time of what sections of your surveys need to go in what order, so that you can literally skip whole sections and just move to other sections based on their answers. And so that's the kind of stuff that we nerd out about all the time. But I just want to give you guys ideas of, hey, yes, this is a very simple slide to slide to slide survey structure where you can get additional information, but you can also do a lot of really creative things with surveys using the conditional logic within them. So anyways, building your surveys is very much the same as building your forms, right? All you're going to do is you're going to add a new slide. Now I'm going to go down here and I'm going to add a new slide here, and I'm going to go grab my desired start date slide that I just created on there. That's literally how easy it is to do this. Now there is one other thing that I wanted to show you guys. This desired monthly revenue goals, this is a single option custom field. And again, you do have the logic options with the single option fields. So Brendan challenged me on this earlier today when we were going through all of this stuff.
That's because they changed it on me.
They changed something. And so I need to make you guys aware of it as of today, which is September the 8th, 2023. If you're watching this on the replay, this may not be the case anymore, but something to be aware of. We talked about auto navigation. So if you go to your styles and you go to your options and you scroll down a little bit, you have all of these different survey settings. If you have,
I want to inject really quick on this. This is so right now the survey builder that he's in is still in beta and will be for, they said, about another 90 days or something like that. So one of this section right here that he's looking at, and this is the same in forms, the URL and message and that type of aspect, and same with all of these toggle buttons, go back to default, what they're looking at right now, every time you come into the survey. So if you come in and change a slide and then save, but you've changed these settings, it will revert back to default on you.
And that's just because it's in beta right now.
That's because it's in beta and it doesn't lock.
Gotcha.
Hopefully they'll change that. I put in a ticket, so yeah.
Cool. Okay, so let's kind of go through some of these survey settings. And Brendan, I'm probably going to need your help on 1 or 2 of these things because I don't always touch them. But you can set this up to go 1 question at a time. What does that mean?
So if you click on that, what it'll do, instead of you having slide by slide by slide, to where like on slide number 4 here, you have 2 questions. Instead, it'll look just like a form, but in the operations, the user experience on the website, it'll only do 1 question at a time. It will not do 2. So you can't categorize things together.
So you're telling me I can build a survey just like a form, turn this on, and it will do individual slides per question.
Correct.
Well, that makes it super easy.
If you toggle that on, your survey will change.
Cool. Okay, awesome. Now, sticky contact is something that we'll cover in more towards the end. I mentioned it a little bit, but that is basically going to autofill all of your standard values if, big IF, the customer comes from your CRM to this form, or they are logged in with the same session that they were logged in with the first time that they filled something out inside your environment. So if they were on your funnel and they filled out a form, and then they come back tomorrow from the same computer, the same IP, the same everything to go book an appointment in your calendar, sticky contact will pull the contact information in that they previously submitted. Another way that this works really, really well is if you're doing a nurture sequence or something like that, and you have a click here and it brings them to a site, their information will be automatically populated because they came from that contact record and into the form. So it's turning sticky contact on can be beneficial, but I also want to make a massive caution red flag about sticky contact because I've done this more so like years ago when I was first playing with this stuff. If you don't hear anything about this training, hear this. If you have sticky contact turned on, that form or survey or whatever sticky contact is turned on with should only be customer facing. This should never be a form that you fill out yourself or your team fills out for a customer. Because if you do that, that will override all of their contact details to your contact details. It will change the contact, and then you'll be like, well, where the heck did Susie go? Susie is now Adam. That's basically what happens when you do that.
And I've got a use case that was a weird one. I had a client who had a form and had sticky contact turned on. The wife, one of her clients, the wife came in, filled out that form, submitted it. The husband on the same computer came and filled out that form and submitted it, and that overwrote the wife's information.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's not even good to have it turned on for customer facing.
Depending on the use cases, for sure. So sticky contact is something that in our environment, we typically have turned off. And the reason that we typically have it turned off is because of the ref URL stuff that I'm going to show you guys at the very end. That makes it a little bit easier. Back button, self-explanatory. It adds a back button. So as you're scrolling through the slides, you'll have the opportunity to go back. And then disable auto navigation. What this does, so this is an important thing to note, is that if you're using a radio button or a single options drop-down menu, if you have this off, so it's, I don't know about you, Brendan, but to me, this sounds backwards. Disable auto navigation turned on. You're enabling to disable auto navigation. It's weird. Yeah. But if you have this turned off, it will auto navigate, meaning every time you click a radio button or you select a single option drop down, it will go to the next slide. So I did this on purpose just to kind of show you guys what I mean by that. In this slide right here, I put this single option drop down menu above the multiple option input fields. And I wanted to do that so that I could show you what happens, which shouldn't happen according to Brendan and according to the coder brain. This should not happen, but it does right now. So again, this could be fixed by the time this goes out into regular release and not in beta. But if I select an option from here live on the survey, it will send me to the next slide before I have the chance to fill this card out. So I'm actually going to show you guys what that looks like, because I think it's important to see it so you know what it actually is doing when you have the auto navigation turned on. So do I have any ad experience? This is a radio button. So by turning auto navigation on or leaving it on, by clicking one of these two buttons, it will automatically go to the next slide. So again, that is where radio buttons and single option buttons just in general. I'm going to say no. I'm going to skip that slide because I want to get to this one. Desired monthly revenue goals, again, is above the desired outcome fields. So if I select this right now, it's going to auto navigate to the next slide, which is bad. You don't want that. So what we do to solve that problem as of right now is we literally just move that one below. And then we would want to make this one required here. But now we don't mind if they fill this out first and then they fill this out, they go to the next slide. Now, what I mean by turn on required here is that this will not allow me to select and progress to the next page unless this one is actually filled out. So it's going to give me an error this time. If I go save and refresh this survey, now I'm going to get an error. I'm going to go through this slide. So you just saw the little conditional logic function happening right there. So I'm going to not fill this out and I'm going to go here. This is not going to let me progress because of the auto navigation. I have to fill this out in order to go to the next slide. So that's what that structure does right there. Progress bar is the hideous looking high-level progress bar here. The only way to change this, guys, is with CSS. Unfortunately, I hope that one day they will come out with custom CSS options for this kind of stuff, but as of today, they don't. And this has been the same way for 5 years.
5 years.
I don't think this has ever changed. So I would love for one day for them to have custom CSS options for you to select. But as of right now, they do not. And then you've got your disable animation. Now, this is something that drives Brendan and I crazy. We always turn this on, and I'm going to show you again. I'm just going to hit the refresh button here. Whenever I select an option, this is going to slide out and slide back in. That is the animation of this survey. Whereas if I come in here and I disable the animation, this is just going to go from one slide to the other, and it's just going to be smooth. It's going to feel better. It's going to look better, and everyone's going to be happier. So it just click and it goes to the next slide instantly. It's a lot faster. It's a lot cleaner. It's your own personal preference. This is just our personal preference is to turn that off. Scroll to the top. I've never used this before.
Basically, if you have, like in a lot of our surveys for the estimator, we have several fields and it makes you scroll down. So you have the top of your survey kind of off window, right? It's above the window line. When they go to the next slide, it will move your entire website down. So the top of your survey is showing again. And that's what scroll to top will do each time.
Awesome. And then this is a new function of the new survey builder to be GDPR compliant fonts. So again, I have not really ever played with this. Well, because I just use the standard fonts most of the time.
If I remember correctly, GDPR is a European Union thing. So us in the States don't use it very often.
Full beans. Now, there are other conditional logic functions that you can do on a survey, and that is to disqualify immediately, disqualify after submit. So you've got your submit options, your disqualify immediately, and your disqualify after submit. Now, by default, and I think it's very important to understand this, if you disqualify somebody immediately, you don't get any of their information. So that literally just ends the survey, says whatever message you want to say here, and you don't get anything. You get none of that person's contact information. So depending on the question structure of your survey, you may want that turned on. Maybe you've got the very first question, save people time. If they answer a certain way on a radio button or a single option, disqualify them immediately so that they cannot progress through your survey because they are not your ideal client. So that's what disqualify immediately does. Disqualify on submit allows you to kind of wait until they're finished the survey to then disqualify them, so that you actually still collect all of their lead information from their survey completion. So an example of this would be if their desired monthly revenue goal is below 10,000, you would come down here and you would scroll down to here and you would say disqualify after submit. Let's hit save and let's go to our options again. Disqualify after submit. We might want to send them to a different URL or a different thank you page, or submit a different type of message for them. But this way we've at least still grabbed their information. We can still market to them and so on and so forth after they have submitted the survey. Now, we've used this in super creative ways where, if they answer one way, we want them to go to this page. If they answer another way, we want them to go to this page. Now, again, this is limited because there's really only these two options, but you can make it so that, if they're a really good candidate, they can go straight to booking an appointment. If you need maybe more information, you disqualify on submit and they can go to a different URL destination based on their answers and based on their results. So lots of ways to get creative with that on the survey side. Platinum folks, do you guys have any questions on survey structures, logic, anything creative that you guys want to see done or know how to do?
No, you're doing a great job.
Going once, going twice. All right. Thanks, Stephen. I appreciate it. All right. So in this document here, I broke down several different, so I've covered this on the survey logic right here, as well as right here. This is basically all we need to talk about. Now, sticky contact, like I said, there's some gotchas here. There's notes to be aware of. And what we do to get around this is we use what are called ref URLs. And so if you've gone into a field, usually these are text fields and things like that. But if you want to auto-populate certain fields because somebody has already mentioned it previously and you don't want them to autofill it again or have to put it in again, there's ways that you can auto-populate this stuff with what are called ref URLs. In order to use a ref URL, you need to also understand what a query key is. And so you'll notice that in each one of these, you've got the label, the placeholder, the short label, which, by the way, probably worth showing. How much ad spend, right? So the short code is going to go underneath, the label is going to go on top, and the placeholder is going to go inside that box. But now we've also got a query key right here. And what you can do with the query keys is actually pre-populate the values within a URL so that they don't have to submit them again. And so the use case for something like this would be, again, you don't want sticky contact turned on because you want to avoid potential colossal failures and lead information getting intermingled by accident. But you still want these forms to be auto completed. And so what we do is we actually build these ref URLs into our trigger links so that when somebody clicks on them from inside of our environment, they're going to open up a URL that is essentially pre-populated with existing data and information. And so how the heck do you build a ref URL? Well, let's dive into it. Now, I'm just going to use the existing URL for the survey, but obviously if you were doing this with a funnel, you would do this with a funnel. So to build a ref URL, we are going to just go question mark at the end of whatever URL you are doing. And then you are going to use the existing query keys. Now I'm going to use the standard ones. So email, phone, full name, full underscore name are the default query keys that we have for these forms. And every single custom field that you create is going to have its own unique query key, which is ironically going to match the custom field key. So it's super easy to remember what the default's going to be. But let's go in here. So we're going to add a question mark and we're going to add the query field name for name, which I'm just going to show you. Go down here, full name. Okay, it's full underscore name. See, I would have screwed it up already. We're going to go back here. We're going to paste that query key in there and we're going to say equals. In this case, I'm going to just write it in so that I can show you what it actually does. And it has to be written in here like this, which it'll automatically do on its own if you use this. But what we would actually do when you're building the URL, I'm just going to cut that out and I'm going to put in the contact name key. So contact.name. And this will auto-populate dynamically what that contact's name is from within your GoHighLevel sub account. So that's how you're going to do that. I'm just going to paste mine back in there like so. And now I want to do email as well. So we're going to add the and sign and we're going to go email equals. I'm going to put in my email here at rmmarketing.ca. And then we want phone number. We're going to go and phone equals I'm going to make one up. 403-555-1234. Now let's also do the revenue goal. Like, so let's just say that at some point we've already asked them this question. And now we want to auto populate the revenue goal field. So let's go grab the ad spend, not revenue goal. We're going to grab desired ad spend query key. We're going to go and we're going to do desired ad spend equals, and let's just put this at $7,500. Now, when I go to this URL, now some of these fields are going to be pre-populated for me. So let's go, yes, I have past ad experience, these ones and these ones. Go next. I'm going to say that, and I'm going to say that. So desired ad spend is pre-populated because of our ref URL being 7,500, and we match the query key. So we can go, yep, that's correct. Desired start date, let's go on the 30th. And now my name, email, phone number, and everything is already automatically populated into this specific field. You notice that I put a fake phone number in there. I have sticky contact turned on this form right now because I wanted to show it as a demo. So it actually knew that regardless of what I put in here, Adam already logged in on to this form from this computer. And so that is the phone number that we're going to use. So that's another great example of sticky contact that does override your ref URL structure. So to finish off, I'm going to show you guys exactly what this all should look like. We're going to do contact.
Can I ask a quick question?
Absolutely,
In
Steven.
terms of the sticky the sticky form thing, is it only because he's on the same machine, or could it have been the same like IP address, like we had two different computers in the same home, or could it have been literally two different locations in the world? It's just that same form with that same reference in that form, so it makes it unique form link. Sorry, a little confused there.
So it's technically based on off of the session ID from the machine itself and the IP address. So that's
it uses cookie formatting in order to do that. And the only time that you can get a cookie is linked to a specific machine. So the specific IP address. So like if you have two computers in your house, you have two different IP addresses for those two devices.
Which is going to create a different session ID for each computer.
Yeah. So if you log in with one, or if you go to a website on one computer and you have sticky contact on that form, and then you go to that same website on a different computer in your house, it'll be blank because it's a different session.
Okay, but you know how like when you send a form to somebody off of a list and they click on the link and they want to fill out your first name, last name, and stuff's pre-populated? That's totally a different thing, isn't it?
That's what we're doing here with the query, the ref URL, and using query.
Is that what they call it? Is there a name for that type of thing?
Ref URL. It's called a reference URL.
And they have nothing to do, sticky whatever forms and ref URLs have nothing to do with each other. They work totally separately. There is no interlinking between the way they operate.
Correct. One is an address that you use to send people to the specific page. The other one is a cookie session that's already on the page.
Correct.
Got it. Sorry about the, you probably mentioned this and I missed that when I was kind of.
No, all good. There's never any dumb questions. If you need clarification, you ask. Okay, so I've just changed this whole URL structure to be basically what you would fill this in as when you're building your link inside of a trigger link or inside of just a hyperlink inside of an email or something like that. This is how you would want to build this using the contact key parameters so that this will auto-populate. Now, I'm going to give you the perfect scenario and the perfect use case for ref URLs. And the use case that we use it for the most ourselves is that oftentimes, so I'm going to use an appointment as an example. So if you're running ads for a client and you're booking them appointments, and maybe you're running a pay per appointment or pay per show structure within your agency, you need to confirm with your client whether or not a specific individual showed up. One of the ways that you can do that is you can actually just have a form that has a question of, did this person show up or not? And then when you use the ref URL structure and you send that to your customer as an internal notification from a workflow as a trigger link, they're going to click on that link, and this form is already going to have the contact information of the person whose appointment they just did. And so they don't, then your client doesn't have to come back in here and, oh, who did I just have that appointment with? I think it was Brendan. Let me go check to find what Brendan's phone number was. Let me go check to see what his email was. This will automatically populate for your client so that they can then completely fill out that form in an instant, right? It saves them a ton of time. They don't have to search for contact information. They can just submit, which is super, super handy and super convenient, which brings me to my last point. And I believe I have this written in this document as well. Let me go check. I have it somewhere.
Do you mind if I ask you another question on that?
Yeah, go for it.
So you're saying that if you want to send somebody automatically a ref link, which has all that information nicely pre-populated, make it easy for the client or prospect, you would do that through a trigger link, because the trigger link is able to be connected to the contact ID internally, and so it knows something about that person. Is that?
No, so we use trigger links just because, I mean, you can just do a ref URL. We use trigger links because it gives a short code and makes it look a lot prettier.
And I can
when
text
you
it to
send
them
something.
really easily. And it's not a big long URL string.
But you just need the URL. And so you would have the base URL of whatever the form is on, then the question mark, and then your query keys with the answers. So question mark name equals contact name and email. And so this is done in a workflow. So that workflow is tied to that specific contact inside that sub account. So when you send an intro notification, it sends the contact's info to your client.
To the ref URL string.
What did you say? Intro notification? What do you mean by that?
Internal.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
So I've heard that UTM parameters are going to be deprecated, or they're talking about that, or I don't know why they're talking about that. Or somebody.
They've been used since the internet started. I don't think they'll ever be able to deprecate those.
Okay. Well, the reason I mentioned UTM, because it sounds like it's a UTM parameter. Is it exactly the same thing as UTM parameter, or is it different?
In a way, yes. UTM parameters are when you gather information from a contact session, you can pass specific website information in through that, kind of through what we call a webhook. So,
yeah, and so when you think about UTM parameters, I think here's a really great example of this, and this might end up with being a cake on my face situation here. I'm actually going to do this from my phone. I do this all the time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the link from the GHL Mastery free group. So I just copied it from my phone, and I'm going to paste it into my browser URL. And this has a ref parameter for the session that shared that link. I did not create this, right? And so when you're running a Google ad, or you're running even a Facebook ad with a pixel, things like this will pop into your URL effectively as a tracking code or a source code, so that you know where that lead actually originated from, where they came from. Right? So if you go into a contact record, it will show you source, and it'll show you what page they came from, or it'll show you what ad they came from. That is all using UTM parameters. So while we are doing something very similar with this, we're not actually doing anything with tracking codes. We're actually just pre-populating contact information into an existing form.
basically same structure, different use case.
Right. One is receiving that and then parsing it internally and doing something with it, where this one is pushing it into a form. Is that basically it?
Correct. Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay,
Thanks for the
awesome.
tip.
So the last thing that I wanted to cover is kind of the sticky contact notes, and why ref URLs versus sticky contact matter. In order to merge contact information, so we have this question come up all the time, like, how do I know that this Facebook lead that I just got, they're going to go to this form? How do I know, how does that information get tied to the same contact record? That is through your standard merge fields. Okay, so the merge fields within HighLevel are phone number or email. So one or the other. If one exists but the other is different, it will change the one that is different with the newest input. Meaning, I gave you my same phone number, but I just gave you a different email. So now it's going to update my contact record with a different email address, but it will still stay on that contact record. Whereas if I give you a different email and phone number on a Facebook form, and then I come out and I fill your form out on your website with a different phone number and different email, I will now have two different contact records inside the system. And so that is one of the main reasons why you would want to use sticky contact or a ref URL structure, because again, say somebody came from a Facebook lead form, they're going to click your email and land on your funnel or your website with the same contact information that they provided you with from their Facebook lead form. And in fact, you can go one step further with this and hide those fields while still using the ref URL so that they don't even have they don't have an option. That's the contact information that's in there. And so you can actually completely hide those fields altogether, but it will still exist in the form. So that's one of the reasons why you want to either use sticky contact or ref URLs. We like to use ref URLs because there's less oopsie-daisies that happen when we use a ref URL than when we use sticky contact. So
I honestly don't think any of our forms or surveys have sticky contact on.
no, I think they're all turned off and we use ref URLs for everything. So, so guys, with that being said, that is the high-level workshop for today on surveys and forms. If you are watching this live or you're watching this on the replay, either on Facebook or on YouTube, and you got this far, if you've got questions, please drop them in the comments threads, and we will be sure to answer those questions for you. So with that being said, thank you guys all for watching, and we will see you next week on workshop number 3. Take care.